I knew the trip was going bad before Laura said a word. With her, that was usually the first sign. She got quieter, not louder. More precise. More still. By the time we were halfway up the mountain road, she had stopped looking at her tablet and was staring through the windshield like she could force the weather to cooperate just by refusing to be impressed by it. I was driving. She was in the passenger seat, one hand wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had already gone cold, the other resting on a folder with her conference notes. The whole trip had felt normal until then. Very normal, actually. I handled the booking, the route, her check-in time, her print materials, the calls with the conference staff, and the extra samples she wanted in case any clients showed up unexpectedly. She handled everything else by existing in that calm, hard way she had that made grown men fix their posture when she walked into a room. Laura MacDonald was 41, brilliant, respected, and about as easy to read as a locked door. "Your wipers are losing," she said, watching the snow smear across the glass. I noticed. "You didn't need to say it like that." I glanced at her. "Like what?" "Like I was accusing you of inventing winter." That almost made me smile. Almost. "I'll try to sound less defensive while we slide off a mountain." She turned her head slowly and looked at me. That look would have shut down half the office. Then, after a second, she said, "Please don't slide off a mountain. It would create paperwork." That got a real laugh out of me, which felt strange enough that I had to grip the wheel harder. The road kept getting worse. Snow came down thick and sideways, and the drop in visibility was so fast it felt personal. One minute I could see the next bend. The next minute it was just white and headlights and the vague dark line of trees. Then the car gave a rough shudder that ran straight through the steering column. Laura looked at the dashboard. "What was that?" "I don't know yet." The engine made another ugly sound. I eased off the gas and tried not to think about how narrow the road had gotten. "There," she said, pointing ahead. At first I thought it was another trick of the weather, but then I saw it too. A building set back from the road behind a half-buried sign and a crooked line of stone posts. Big enough to be a lodge once. Maybe even elegant once. Now it looked like the mountain had been trying to reclaim it for years. I got us into the driveway, if it could still be called that, and pulled up under a sagging awning near the entrance. The engine coughed one last time and died. For a moment neither of us moved. Snow hit the windshield in hard, fast bursts. Laura finally asked, "Tell me this is one of those temporary problems you fix in 10 minutes. It would be dishonest." She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them again. "Fine. We go inside, assess what we have, and wait for the storm to ease." That was Laura. Not panic. Not drama. A decision in a voice that made it sound like conditions had asked permission before becoming inconvenient. We got out and the cold hit like a slap. The wind pushed straight through my coat. I grabbed the overnight bags from the trunk while Laura held her scarf against her throat and stared up at the hotel. 2 floors, dark windows, one flickering exterior light near the side entrance. The front doors were locked, but a service door around the side gave way after I leaned into it with my shoulder. Inside was worse and better than I expected. Better because it blocked the wind. Worse because the place was barely alive. The lobby smelled like dust, old wood, and something damp. A front desk stood under a dead chandelier. Furniture was draped with sheets in one corner. Somewhere deeper in the building, something knocked softly and then stopped. The heat, if there was any, wasn't reaching the entrance. Laura stepped in behind me and hugged her arms once before pretending she hadn't. "Is anyone here?" she called out. "Nothing." I set the bags down. "Stay here." She gave me a flat look. "I'm not one of your tasks, Ben." "No. But if this place has squatters or a broken floor or something worse, I'd rather find it first." That landed somewhere between argument and acceptance. She said nothing, which in Laura's language was close enough. I checked the ground floor as fast as I could without being reckless. Empty lounge. Empty dining room. A kitchen with dead appliances and dusty shelves. A utility room. 2 restrooms, one with a tap that coughed brown water before running clear and then icy cold. No staff. No voices. No sign that anyone had been running the place properly for a long time. When I came back, Laura was standing at the front windows, trying her phone. No signal? I asked. She held up the screen. No useful signal. I have one bar just long enough to fail. Same. She looked past me into the dark hall. How bad? Bad enough that I wouldn't sleep in the car. That made her turn fully toward me. Outside, the wind hit the building so hard the old glass gave a low rattle. For the first time since the trip started, I saw something shift in her face. Not fear exactly. Just the moment a smart person accepts that the plan is gone. So, she said quietly, glancing at the dead lobby, the dark hallways, then back at me. We're staying here. I looked at the snow burying the driveway inch by inch. Yeah, I said. We're stuck here through the night. Then I checked the windows again and added, maybe longer. I wrote this part with the blacklist in mind and kept the phrasing clean for YouTube's safety. By morning, the lobby felt even colder than it had the night before. I woke up on a sofa that had the comfort of a wooden bench, with my coat still on and one arm completely numb. The fire I'd managed to start in the old lounge fireplace had collapsed into a faint orange glow. Outside the tall windows, there was nothing but white. The hotel looked like it had been dropped into the middle of a blank page. Laura was already awake. She was sitting in one of the heavy chairs near the fire, wrapped in a blanket I'd found in a storage closet, holding a candle low while she looked through the notes for her presentation like there was still a chance any of this trip was going to happen on schedule. You sleep at all? I asked. A little. That means no. She looked up at me. You snore less than I expected. I'm glad the night gave you something positive. It didn't. I'm choosing to be generous. That was the first thing she said that morning, and weirdly, it helped. It made the place feel a little less dead. I got the fire going again using broken chair pieces from a stack I'd found in a back room. Then I checked the taps. Same as before, freezing water after a lot of coughing and noise from the pipes. Not much pressure, but enough to fill 2 pitchers from the bar. In the kitchen, I found a box of old tea bags, salt packets, some canned beans that were somehow still good, and a half-open pack of crackers that Laura looked at like it had personally insulted her standards. We're not eating those, she said. We are exactly eating those. They were probably here during the last ice age. So were we, emotionally, about 2 hours ago. She pressed her lips together, trying not to smile. You're getting very casual with me, Ben. I opened the beans with a rusted hand opener after fighting it for almost 5 minutes. The hotel has changed me. The landline behind the desk had a dial tone for about 3 seconds before going dead. I tried it 6 more times anyway. Laura stood nearby, arms crossed, watching the cord like she could shame it into working. No one knows we're here, she said. They know our route. They know the conference route. Not this. I didn't answer because she was right. That changed the mood again. By midday we'd done a full sweep of the first floor and part of the second. Most of the rooms were useless. Some had mattresses, some had blankets, some had nothing but old curtains and the smell of closed air. We moved what we could into the lounge because it was the only place with a fireplace big enough to matter. I made a pile of blankets near the wall. Laura made a neat stack of canned food and water like she was organizing a meeting room instead of trying to survive in an abandoned mountain hotel. At one point she caught me looking at her while she folded a blanket with the kind of serious concentration she normally reserved for client budgets. What? Nothing. You had a face. I didn't have a face. You absolutely had a face. I shrugged. You're different here. That made her stop moving. Different how? I should have walked that back. Instead I said, you don't have 10 people around you waiting for instructions. And I don't think you like being the one who can't control the room. Her expression turned flat again, but not angry. More like I'd said something expensive out loud. No, she said. I don't. A couple of hours later, she decided she was coming outside with me. I was trying to clear a path from the side entrance to a little storage shed behind the building. I'd seen it from an upstairs window and thought it might have wood, tools, anything useful. The wind had eased, but the snow was still deep and the cold bit straight through your clothes. Laura appeared at the door with another blanket wrapped around her shoulders and that same look she used in meetings when someone thought they were going to tell her no. You're not going alone. I'm checking a shed, not crossing a border. You've been doing everything since we got here. That's because I'm good at carrying things and making bad decisions. And I'm good at noticing when someone is tired. I looked at her for a second. Laura, the ground's bad. So walk slower. I should have argued harder. Instead I handed her the flashlight and said, stay near me. The shed was maybe 30 yards from the building, but in that weather it felt farther. Snow had drifted almost to the handle. We got it open with both of us pulling. Inside, I found chopped wood, a broken shovel, 2 old lanterns, and 3 bottles of water that hadn't frozen yet. It felt like hitting a jackpot. Then, on the way back, Laura slipped. It happened fast. One step, then a sharp sound, then she dropped hard against the side wall near the entrance. The flashlight flew from her hand and landed in the snow. I was next to her in a second. Don't move. I'm fine, she said through clenched teeth, which told me she absolutely was not. You're not fine. I said I'm. She stopped when I touched her ankle through the fabric and she sucked in a breath so hard it scared me. Okay, I said, keeping my voice steady. Don't try to stand. Her face had lost all color. Not the composed office version of pale. Real pale. Cold pale. I can stand, she said, quieter now. No. The wind picked up again around us, throwing snow against the wall. I got one arm around her back and the other under her knees before she could argue. She looked shocked for half a second, not because I lifted her, but because I did it without asking. Ben. Save it. She wrapped one hand around my coat without looking at me. Getting her inside took maybe 10 seconds. It felt longer. Once we were back in the lounge, I got her near the fire, took off her boot as carefully as I could, and saw the swelling start almost right away. She leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. I knelt in front of her with a blanket in one hand and the bottle of water in the other. You should have stayed inside. After a second, she opened her eyes and looked straight at me. Yes, she said. I should have. No title. No edge. No distance. Just that. And sitting there in that dead hotel, with snow pressing against the windows and her finally letting me take control without a fight, it hit me that whatever we had been at the office wasn't what we were anymore. That night, the hotel sounded different. Maybe it was because the wind had dropped enough for me to hear the building itself again. Pipes knocking somewhere in the walls. Old wood settling. A loose sign outside tapping every few seconds. Or maybe it was because Laura had stopped acting like any of this was temporary. She didn't try to review conference notes anymore. She didn't ask what time it was. She just sat near the fire with her injured ankle propped on a folded blanket and watched me move around the lounge like I belonged there more than she did. I found another lamp in a storage room and got it working after way too much effort. The light it gave off was weak and yellow, but it made the room feel less like a place people had abandoned and more like somewhere two stubborn idiots were trying to survive. "How bad is it?" she asked when I checked her ankle again. "Still swollen." "That's not a number." "No, but it's honest." She leaned back and looked at the ceiling. "I hate this." "I know. No, I mean I really hate this. I hate not being useful. I hate needing help to stand up. I hate that you look at me now like you're already planning around what I can't do." I sat back on my heels. "I'm planning around what keeps you from making it worse. That is not better." I almost said something careful. Something polite. Instead I said, "You don't always have to win every room you're in." Her eyes moved back to me. "That sounds like something a junior assistant says right before getting fired. Good thing you can't reach the office." For 1 second she just stared at me. Then she laughed. Not the small, dry kind she used when someone surprised her in a meeting. A real laugh. Short, tired, but real. It changed the room. Later I helped her move from the chair to a sofa closer to the fire. She let me do it without that automatic resistance she always had. Her hand stayed on my shoulder an extra second after she sat down, like she only noticed it when I noticed it. "Sorry," she said. "For what?" She looked away. "For making everything harder than it needs to be." That was so unlike her that I didn't answer right away. "You don't do that," I said finally. "You just don't let people see when something gets to you." She pulled the blanket higher. "That system has worked very well for me." "Has it?" The room went quiet again. Not bad quiet. Just the kind that made people either tell the truth or leave. "My ex-husband used to say I treated every conversation like a negotiation," she said. I looked at her. "You were married?" "Briefly." That one word held a whole story inside it. She watched the fire while she talked. Told me how she had built her whole life around being dependable, sharp, impossible to dismiss. How once she got good at that, nobody asked for anything else from her. At work they admired her. Outside work they assumed she preferred distance. After enough years, she had stopped correcting them. "You?" she asked after a while. I shrugged. "There's less mystery with me." "I doubt that." "There really isn't. I'm the guy people trust with details. I remember things, fix things, stay late, make sure other people don't look unprepared." She turned her head. "You say that like it makes you small." "It makes me invisible." She didn't argue. Which somehow felt worse and better at the same time. The next morning I decided I had to check the back side of the property. From an upstairs window I'd seen what looked like another service building lower on the slope, maybe connected to old water tanks or backup power. If there was anything useful left there, we needed it. Laura hated the idea immediately. "You are not going out there alone." "I'm not asking for approval. You've been outside twice already. And both times I came back." Her jaw tightened. "That is not the reassuring argument you think it is." I crouched in front of her so we were eye level. "Listen to me. You can't put weight on that ankle for more than a few steps. We're low on wood. The water pressure is getting worse. I need to know if there's anything else on this property we can use." Her face changed then. Less anger. More something rawer. "And if you don't come back?" I had no answer ready for that because I hadn't let myself frame it that way. "I will," I said. She looked at me like she was trying to decide whether to believe me or punish me for saying it so simply. In the end, she just nodded once. I was gone longer than I meant to be. The path behind the hotel was nearly buried, and what looked close from the window turned out to be farther downhill than I expected. I found the outbuilding, half collapsed on one side, with old maintenance shelves inside. No generator. No miracle solution. But I did find 2 more lanterns, bottled water, a crate of canned soup, and a bundle of thick old curtains I figured could help block drafts. By the time I started back, the weather shifted again. Not a full storm, but enough wind and blowing snow to kill my visibility. I had to stop twice and get my bearings. Once I nearly went too far right and ended up knee-deep near a drop behind the side lot. My hands were stiff by the time I reached the hotel door. When I got inside, Laura was already there in the hallway, one hand braced against the wall, barefoot on one side because she'd clearly shoved her good foot into a shoe and ignored everything else. For a second she just looked at me. Then she hit my chest with both hands. Not hard, but hard enough to tell me exactly how long she had been scared. "Where were you?" I got turned around. "You were gone for hours." "I know." I thought. She stopped, and that unfinished sentence said enough. I set the supplies down and caught her before she lost balance. She was shaking. From cold, from pain, from anger, from relief. Probably all of it. "You shouldn't be standing out here," I said softly. "You shouldn't disappear." We stayed like that for a second too long to pretend it was nothing. Her hands were gripping my coat. My arm was around her waist. Her face was so close I could see the strain she'd been hiding all day. Then she said, barely above a whisper, "Don't do that to me again." Something in me gave way right there. "I won't," I said. She looked at my mouth, then back at my eyes, like she was making one clean decision and refusing to dress it up as anything else. When she kissed me, it wasn't hesitant. It was tired, relieved, almost angry in the way only real relief can be. I kissed her back before I had time to think about titles, jobs, consequences, any of it. None of that existed in that hallway. There was just the old hotel, the cold, the hours she thought I was gone, and the fact that when I came back, she looked like she'd been holding herself together by force. That night we stayed by the fire under the same pile of blankets, talking less than before because we didn't need words for every part anymore. Every time the wind hit the windows, she moved closer without seeming to realize it. Every time I thought about pulling back, she made that impossible. By then, neither of us was pretending this was only about getting through the storm. We got out on the 4th day. Not because anyone suddenly came charging through the snow to save us, and not because the whole thing turned dramatic at the last second. The storm just finally loosened its grip enough for the road to become possible again. A maintenance truck from a nearby property spotted the car half buried near the drive, called it in once they got signal farther down, and after that everything moved too fast. That was the strange part. For days, every hour had stretched. Every small thing mattered. Firewood mattered. Water mattered. Whether Laura could put weight on her ankle mattered. Whether the wind sounded worse than the hour before mattered. Then suddenly there were people, voices, engines, practical questions, and the ugly shock of normal life forcing itself back into place. At the clinic, they confirmed what we already knew. A bad sprain, not a break. Laura took the news with that same composed face she wore in meetings, as if pain was just another scheduling issue. I stood near the door while a nurse wrapped her ankle properly and asked both of us questions. Names. Dates. How long had we been there? Did we have food? Heat. Injuries. Laura answered in a level voice, clean and brief. I kept waiting for her to look at me the way she had in the hotel hallway. The way she had by the fire. The way she had in the dark when neither of us could pretend anymore. But once we were back among other people, I could see it happening. The wall was going back up. By the time we returned to the city, she was almost fully herself again. Sharp. Controlled. Efficient. She thanked me for handling the insurance report in the same tone she might have used after any complicated business trip. At the office the next morning, people gathered around with concern that was half real and half hungry. Everyone wanted details without asking for them directly. Must have been rough up there. Crazy weather. Good thing Ben was with you. Laura handled all of it perfectly. Too perfectly. Yes, it was an unfortunate delay. Yes, Mr. Nielsen was helpful. Yes, we were lucky to find shelter. Mr. Nielsen. That one landed harder than it should have. She went back to Mr. Nielsen like the fire never happened. Is she just being smart, or is she cold-hearted? Let's settle this in the comments. I told myself it was temporary. That she was protecting herself. Protecting both of us. I knew what the office was like. People noticed everything, especially anything involving Laura. She had spent years building that image. Cold, exact, untouchable. A woman nobody gossiped about because nobody could get close enough to her to invent a believable story. And me? I was still the assistant. Still the reliable background guy who made other people's days run smoothly. Except now every time she passed my desk, I remembered her hand gripping my coat in that freezing hallway. I remembered her asleep under a pile of hotel blankets with her head against my shoulder. I remembered the look on her face when she thought I hadn't come back. That made the office version of her feel almost harder than if nothing had happened at all. 3 days went by like that. On the 4th day, she called me into her office just before lunch. I went in with my pulse already too high and found her standing by the window, one heel on, the other foot still in a lower shoe because of the ankle. Even injured, she looked intimidating enough to make junior staff nervous in the hallway. She didn't ask me to sit. There are updated drawings for the Halpern account, she said. I need them sent before 2. Done. There's also a revised travel expense file on my desk. I saw it. She nodded once. Good. That was it. That was the whole meeting. Pure business. So clean it was almost cruel. I left before my face could show anything, got back to my desk, and spent the next hour hating how stupid I felt. I wasn't some teenager inventing meaning where there was none. I had been there. I knew what happened in that hotel. I knew the difference between survival panic and something real. But the real world had rules, and Laura MacDonald had lived by rules longer than I'd probably understood them. By 6:30, most of the office had emptied out. I was shutting down my computer when I heard her voice behind me. Ben. Not Mr. Nielsen. Ben. I turned around too fast. She was standing there in her coat, hair pulled back, expression unreadable as ever. For one awful second I thought she was about to hand me some late task and that would somehow be the final insult. Instead she held up 2 tickets between her fingers. I just stared at them. She took 1 step closer. I handled the conference fallout. I handled the board. I handled 3 days of people asking stupid questions in careful language. Her voice stayed calm, but there was something under it now. Something done with restraint. And I've spent enough time reminding myself how to be sensible. I still couldn't speak. Her mouth shifted, not quite a smile, but close. Then she held the tickets out to me and said, "No more mountains. No more freezing. I booked us an island."